This program and today is organized from Studium Generale. I'm a program maker for Studium Generale. And we organize all kinds of activities like this one on topic that matters. You can also see some of them on the back that we have coming up. And for students, it's also good to know that we have a certificate. You can visit 5 of our events, then write a small report of the event in a reflective way. So what you thought of it, any questions that you had. And then you can get a certificate. More information you can find on our website, of course. So today we are going to talk about a very special and maybe a little bit weird for some phenomenon. It's called ASMR, and it's the feeling that some people experience when they hear or see people making certain noises like tapping, whispering, crackling. And it's also really popular on YouTube. There's like millions of videos on it that people watch a lot. And today we will also look at ASMR, especially from a perspective of relaxation and also digital intimacy, because we have some speakers that can say some very interesting things about that. But before we start with the speakers, I can talk a lot, of course, about what ASMR is, but we can also start by showing you what ASMR is. So there's a video coming up. Now it doesn't work. I checked everything this morning and it worked, and now I don't know why. Yes.
Hallo, hallo. Hallo, hallo. Ik ben Isabel, Imagination. En welkom bij deze ANWP ASMR video. ASMR staat voor Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. En het is een wetenschappelijke term voor een euforisch ontspannen gevoel dat je kunt krijgen bij het luisteren naar prettige geluiden of bij het kijken naar bepaalde beelden. Wellicht heb je zelf wel eens ervaren hoe rustgevend regendruppels op een raam kunnen zijn. Misschien ben je wel eens loom geworden bij de zachte, constante ruis in de auto. ASMR-video's zijn enorm populair op YouTube. Mensen die er naar kijken ervaren tintelingen in hun achterhoofd en kippenvel over het lichaam. Deze video's zijn ontworpen voor ontspanning en een goede nachtrust. Maar ze kunnen ook helpen bij angststoornissen, depressie en zelfs migraine. Vanavond kom jij tot rust onder begeleiding van geluiden die ik ga maken met verschillende auto-onderdelen. Ga dus lekker lang uit liggen onder een deken en zorg dat je headphones op hebt, zodat je de rustgevende geluiden beter geniet van deze kalmerende ervaring. Laat de ANWB je naar dromenland brengen. Veel plezier.
All right, I think we will end it there. If you want to see the video in whole, you can of course look it up. Just to give you some information of what we're going to be doing today, we will have 2 lectures of approximately 20 minutes and then also a small Q&A after every lecture. Then we will have a 10 minutes break. And afterwards we have a really interesting interview coming up with filmmaker Guus Voorham on his ASMR film Alone Together on ASMR Girlfriends. So that's kind of the schedule of today. So then I think we can go to the first speaker, which is Nyklicek. He's a psychologist at Tilburg University here, and he, in his research, he mainly focuses on attention and emotion regulation, and also mindfulness in relation to well-being and health. And today he will make a comparison between ASMR and mindfulness. But before we start with the lecture, I would like to show you a video that I thought was really fitting to this idea of mindful, slow ASMR. And I think you know him because he is quite famous. So here we go.
Hi, I'm glad you could join me today. Today we're going to do a wonderful little painting, and I think you're going to enjoy this one. So I tell you what, let's don't waste any time. Let's have them run all the colors across the screen that you need to paint along with me. Me, I've got my old 18 by 24 inch canvas up here. It's all covered with a nice thin even coat of the liquid white. It's wet, slick, it's ready to go. So let's just do what I thought today. Let's do maybe a little traditional painting with some mountains and pretty sky and maybe some water and who knows. Let's just do something and have a good time. Start off with the old 2-inch brush today. I'm gonna go right into a smallest little amount of the Indian yellow. Just a little color. Doesn't take much. I'm gonna put a little yellowish glow in the sky. Now the Indian yellow is quite transparent. There. I'm in a bright, happy mood today. It's a good day to be alive. So let's do a painting that reflects that. Shoot, every day's a good day to be alive. There we are. Maybe a little bit of it down here. If we're going to have water, we just put a little in there. What the heck? Okay, without even cleaning the brush, I'm going to go right into a touch of alizarin crimson and just tap a little bit into the bristles, like so. Like so. And we'll go right up above this, and I'm just going to lay in a little bit of crimson. Just wherever. Sort of let them flow together. There we are. Just blend those edges out. Very nice. Just put a little warm spot up here in the sky. Okay, we'll take a little crimson and we'll throw a little of that down here too. What the heck? What the heck? We don't care. That's good enough. Okay, just have a good time. That's really what painting's all about. Is just enjoy yourself. Okay, little phthalo.
So can I see some hands for who knows who this is? Yeah, I think all of you know, right? Can you say who he is? Yeah. Yeah, of course, Bob Ross. Yeah, he was, I think, really one of the early ASMR kind of like videos, right? So yeah, interesting to see. All right, then I would give the floor to Ivan. Please give a big applause for Ivan Nyklicek.
Thank you, Hannah. Does this work? I think yes.
Yes.
Am I well understandable? Thank you for the nice introduction. Yeah, and indeed, my topic of research is actually mainly mindfulness. And when Hannah asked me actually to tell something perhaps here about ASMR, I thought, what is that? I never heard of that. And now I'm a kind of an expert. Not really, because it's actually very easy to become a little bit of a scientific ASMR expert, I found out, because there is not much literature out there yet. I will show you. So first maybe, again, back to the term, autonomous sensory meridian response, which would say, okay, it's something about the autonomous nervous system which is involved, right? So that goes automatic. And of course sensory, because sensory stimulation provokes the response. Meridian, I first thought it has something to do with the Chinese energy, so then I was kind of skeptical. But it's not the case. I think the word meridian here is pointing at some peak experience. Which doesn't mean that before and after the experience you have all kinds of other experiences, but there is one or several peaks usually involved with chills and goosebumps indeed, as told before. Usually starting at the crown of the head and going down, but it can actually vary a little bit. The triggers, this has been a study by Puerio a couple of years ago, and he investigated a more large sample, as you see, more than 800 participants, of whom most actually did experience ASMR. So it's not a random sample from the population. And you see that which were the most common triggers. So people speaking softly, as we have also seen in one of the videos, getting your hair played with, so that's more touch, of course. Whispering, again, auditory. Close personal attention, also. Getting a haircut, interaction with face or head, which is also more tactile. Tapping on hard surfaces. Watching people do things in a careful, attentive way. Bob Ross is, I think, an example of that one. And then some other possibilities. And you see on the lower end doesn't get so much, actually, so much effective as a trigger. Lip smacking and observing, listening to someone eating. This is more controversial, I think. Probably you have heard of misophonia, maybe. Some people actually really are disgusted by such sounds. So we'll come to that a little bit later, about the relation between also misophonia and ASMR. Regarding auditory, because a lot of these triggers are auditory. So there has been one study who tried to analyze the auditory characteristics of the stimuli. And they found out that mostly more relatively dark sounds, which are nearby and compact, produce most chills. So again, these lip smacking and eating sounds. Misophonia is triggered in some people by those sounds, as I said. Interesting is, I think, this has been shown by a study of some Dutch people. Actually, Romke Rauw, who you see here, has been doing a PhD at our university before. And she found that patients with misophonia really are disgusted by several kinds of mainly eating sounds, that actually half of them also experience ASMR, which is of course very pleasant usually. So they experience both very unpleasant sensations to some sounds and very pleasant sensations to some other sounds. So probably these people, and this is actually known from the literature, they have an enhanced sensitivity to all kinds of stimulation, mainly auditory. Maybe I would like to bring a little bit maybe of evolutionary view. I was just thinking about that. How could we interpret this from an evolutionary point of view? As you know, of course, most of our reactions, evolutionary psychologists at least, try to explain from this point of view as it has to be something functional and might sometimes even explain maybe some effects or bring forward some hypotheses about possible effects. So most of those sounds, usually sounds, are quite soft, right? Like whispering, and very close, very close. So as if someone is actually whispering in your ear, which is quite intimate, isn't it? And you could say in nature, when does that occur? Usually someone that you know very well does that, right? Is speaking softly in your ear. So I would say it is a cue probably for your brain that the situation is safe, pleasant, and intimate. And in literature you will see the comparison with a thing called social grooming. Grooming, you know, from, like chimpanzees do all kinds of grooming, which is also associated with pleasurable feelings in both partners of the grooming, actually, and also the release of some hormones, like oxytocin. It's a very important social hormone that is released during pleasant interaction. So you would expect that this would lead to positive mood, release of some indeed pleasant and social hormones, like oxytocin, endorphins, of course, like endogenous opioids that we all have, and dopamine, for instance. And that it would go together with physiological relaxation, which would mainly be brought about by activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the opposite of sympathetic, the one that is known for the fight and flight reaction. The parasympathetic is important for relaxing, digestion, and having a good time. Okay, so this is theoretical, you could say. But what do we know from scientific literature? As I already tapped upon, there is really not much out there. I did a search in PsycInfo. Of course, almost all literature you would expect in psychological articles, because the phenomenon is largely psychological, partly physiological, and there were only 54 hits if you search with ASMR and also the full name in any field. Only 54 hits, of which 14 were irrelevant. So just 40 scientific papers. So that's interesting. And what did I found? First, maybe some characteristics of people experiencing ASMR. I think that's interesting. It has to be said that it's really only a part of people that experiences ASMR, meaning really those chills, the peak experiences. Depending on the sample, actually I saw between 0%, there was actually one Japanese study in 20 adults. I don't know, maybe by chance these people were not sensitive, or maybe they had not very suitable triggers. They had ASMR videos, they said, but I don't know, maybe it didn't work. Up till 80%. But this was in about 1,000 students, which were actually self-selected. So it was a convenient sample, and people knew that the investigation would be about ASMR. So probably that's why the percentage is so high here. Interesting, maybe the people experiencing ASMR score higher than people who do not experience ASMR on neuroticism, the tendency to experience negative emotions, and openness. The last one, I think, is not surprising, right? Openness to experience. And low levels on conscientiousness. These were, by the way, two groups of 290 participants, so half of them ASMR experiencers and half of them not. Conscientiousness, yeah, I don't know how to interpret that, of course. Maybe it might have something to do with the willingness to get absorbed in the experience rather completely, which, if you let yourself really be flown away and absorbed by an experience, then the part of your executive brain functions probably on a lower activity level. But that has not been investigated yet, I think. Higher scores again on neuroticism and anxiety by a different research group, and they found that those actually scoring higher on anxiety had more benefit of ASMR. So the ASMR had larger effects on them. They actually experienced more ASMR when having more anxiety, interestingly. And this is a similar finding by this group. So more ASMR sensations in those people scoring high on anxiety. So several publications have actually found this. If you have questions, please you can ask them in between if the chairperson is okay with that. Then another question. Then what are the effects? So not a lot is out there actually, and most is anecdotal. So for instance, as we saw in that video, that it might help with insomnia, it might help with depressive feelings. There is no research on that, almost. I will show you a little bit. This is one example. More than 1,000, again, convenience participants, of whom actually 800 experienced ASMR and 200 did not. And what did they do is there was an online investigation, and they showed them either exposure to a non-ASMR video, ASMR sound, but not spoken, and spoken ASMR, the dark bars. And what you see is that those experiencing ASMR indeed, of course, experience much more tingles, as you would expect. And they experience also a little bit more, well, this is significant, excitement, but also calmness, relaxation. So that's interesting, right? So at the same time, relaxation, but also some excitement. So it's a bit different than most relaxing phenomena, which is usually just relaxation. Actually, mindfulness is sometimes also both of the two. Stress reduction and reduction of sadness. But these were not clinical participants, right? It's just people from the general population who were interested in this research. But I can see that it might be seen as maybe promising. They also measured some physiology. Again, you see the enhancement of tingles. This is only 100 participants, by the way, so they had two studies. Here is Perio, but it's the same, Puerio actually, sorry for the misspelling. And here they compared again non-ASMR, a standard ASMR video, and self-selected ASMR that people actually liked. And you see that the self-selected worked best, but actually the non-self-selected also worked quite well in people who describe themselves as ASMR experiencers. Again, there was an increase in both excitement, significant, and in calmness. In this smaller group, there were no significant differences in stress and sadness feelings. But regarding calmness and excitement, you see in the physiology a decrease in heart rate, especially in the ASMR practitioners or experiencers. So suggesting, of course, relaxation. And at the same time, this one is an increase in skin conductance level. And skin conductance level is indicative actually of excitement, of arousal. So it's a combination actually of relaxation and at the same time arousal, which is pretty unique, I think. Maybe some other psychophysiological effects if you are interested in that. In this study by Swartz and colleagues, it's a small sample, but they found that EEG, so electroencephalography, measuring cortical waves, there was a switch towards lower frequencies, so towards alpha and theta waves. Alpha and theta waves in the brain are really an indication of relaxation. This has been also found in another study, alpha power, so again alpha waves having a larger power during ASMR exposure, but this was found actually only in the 15 people that really experienced also subjectively ASMR. So it was not found in 15 control participants who did not experience ASMR. So you can see that it's depending actually also on the subjective response. This Japanese study, this is the one I mentioned briefly before, that actually 0 of the 20 participants experienced chills. So I don't know what went wrong there, whether it was a very select, strange group of people or whether their videos were not effective. So there were no chills reported, and they compared it to classical music and found actually similar relaxation. So there was a relaxation in both conditions, but no chills, just relaxation. Only the ASMR condition produced more, MPFC is medial prefrontal cortex activation. So it's activation in the prefrontal cortex and in the medial part, how to interpret that, that's difficult to say, because this region is involved in very many functions, ranging from introspection, interoception, but also in mind wandering and attention control. So it's difficult to interpret, but there was an effect there. And this is, I think, also interesting, by Smith and colleagues, activation in a cortical dorsal attention network, which again is prefrontal mainly, but more dorsal, so on the upper part of the brain, which you could consider as more or less the highest cortical region involved in executive functioning, like switching attention, planning, higher rational and executive functioning, which actually has also been found in mindfulness, during mindfulness meditation, which would be suggestive, I think, of a kind of an active attention component. It's not just passive listening, but probably also there is an active component. So probably the attention is not just drawn towards those stimuli, but the brain is actively involved in listening to them, and maybe also switching attention if, for instance, there are different sounds from left to right, etc. That could be possible. So maybe regarding the link with mindfulness, theoretically possible or plausible links and also empirical. How am I doing on time, Hannah? Start to round off, yeah. All right. So mindfulness has been, in the scientific literature, has been defined as being attentive to phenomena of the present moment in a non-judgmental way, in an open way. So according to this definition, you would expect a link, right? Because ASMR is also paying attention to what is actually present in the present moment in an open way. Whatever is there, one is, at least that's the question. I don't know if, I'm not an ASMR practitioner myself, so I don't know if there is some judgmental component, but I would imagine that there is openness, as we have seen also before regarding correlations with the personality trait of openness. Briefly, mindfulness-based interventions, there are several of them, are really clinically effective to reduce stress, to reduce depressive symptoms and anxiety symptoms. Usually these are 8-week programs, and there's a lot of literature on that. So we'll not be going into that. So what might be the link theoretically? So again, maybe this mainly often soft and close by sensory stimulation, I would think that it is expected to facilitate present moment attention, so mindfulness. People are naturally mindful, probably, when listening to ASMR. So again, non-judgmental, I don't know, probably it's associated with larger openness, both of them, so I would expect that, but there is no research on that. And also maybe the other way around. I would expect that mindfulness is expected to enhance ASMR sensitivity too. And actually there is only one empirical study today on the association, published just a couple of months ago actually, in which people doing the mindful body scan, I don't know if you know that, but you are actually guided with your attention towards various parts of your body and to just be open to any sensations that you might encounter there. If you do that before ASMR video, then this facilitated the ASMR experience. So more chills and more pleasant feelings after having done a mindful body scan compared to having listened to music or even another control condition. The effect size was medium, so it's actually, you could say, could be clinically relevant even. From medium effect size, usually effects are seen as clinically relevant. Maybe just a last slide. This is interesting, but it's a really rubbish figure, as you see. You know, it's just taken from SPSS. It is published in probably because this is the first study showing this. More than 1,000 people, and showing actually. So this is the only study I found that has some resemblance to a clinically relevant study. Again, these people are not diagnosed with some clinical condition. But scored either relatively high on the self-report scale of insomnia or depression or combination of insomnia and depression or neither of those. And this is a really bad figure, but what does it say? Well, a change in mood, and it's also reverse chord. Anyway. What it means is that the mood after having listened to ASMR got better, especially in people who were depressed, at least had higher depressive scores, especially if combined with insomnia. So this is the one. You see that this really shows the largest. It says here decrease, but it's a decrease in bad mood, so increase in good mood. And at the same time, again, this is reversed, so this is not arousal, as is said here, but it's actually relaxation. So largest relaxation has been found in people having insomnia and depression. At least not a diagnosis again, but enhanced scores, which kind of is promising, I think. So conclusions, ASMR seems a real phenomenon, seen both on a subjective level and physiological level. However, research is still in its infancy. Psychophysiological effects are found in a part of people, not in all. And there are some anecdotal reports mainly regarding beneficial effects on mood and sleep, but no real clinical studies yet. So we really need that, I guess. Is there time for some questions now?
Yeah, we can have some questions. Do we have any? Yeah, I see a few. I'll start with you.
Hello, that was really interesting. I had a question so I read this thing about mirror neurons, how there are these neurons that fire even when we're watching someone when we observe someone doing something. And the same neurons also fire when we are doing the same thing. So do you think that can explain ASMR in any way?
Yeah, that's an interesting notion. Yeah, it could have certainly play a role. I don't know, maybe actually, so there is no research on that. That's part one. And part two, I would ask actually people maybe from the audience who are watching ASMR from time to time, if when watching such a video you see someone doing the things, if you have the feeling more or less that you also are performing the same action, or that you somehow feel the same sensations as the person in the video. Is that the case? Do you have such? No, not really? So you're more a receptive, maybe a receptive participant? But it's an interesting suggestion to do research on, that's for sure.
All right, thank you for your question. I saw some over here. Let's start here.
I was just wondering for the last study if the results were significant, the difference between
Yes.
the conditions?
Yes, this was significant, and good that you pointed out. It was actually was medium to large effects. The large effect found in those people scoring high on insomnia and depression, and in combination with actually experiencing chills. But you saw also a significant medium effect in those not experiencing chills, although smaller. But both were significant, actually.
All right, thank you. You had a question?
Hi, I was just thinking, and I realized that there's not a lot of study into ASMR. But what do you think? Because I'm interested in. Do you think there's some kind of correlation between ASMR and hypnotism? In the sense that, so for instance, hypnotism can be. I don't know if I imagine that there's more study into hypnotism, but I would be interested to see what this would look like if there was some kind of like hypnotism like study with it, because I have this idea that there would be some kind of basically it would look sort of similar is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I personally, at least, this is just me, is that when I'm watching ASMR or Bob Ross, I get put into a kind of trance that makes me feel good and safe and all that. And I feel like these are similar things that might be experienced with hypnotism.
Yeah, I would expect the same, actually. And there is one study that I don't think I mentioned it when talking about the characteristics of people who are experiencing ASMR. There has been actually found also a correlation between the propensity to experience ASMR and a higher score on the, I think it was called the suggestibility scale, something like that. So people who have a larger propensity to go along with some suggestions like hypnosis. So there is a link between the two. That would really be good to investigate further. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Was there any other questions? I think we had all right, like all hands. Yeah. Thank you, Ivan, for the very interesting lecture. I'm actually really surprised that like so little research is being done still on it. I did not really expect that.
Yeah, and actually, just to mention briefly, those 40 studies were all after 2018, except one. So it's very recent.
It's very recent, yeah.
So if someone is into research, there is a whole field that you can work.
There's your chance. Please, big applause for Ivan. All right, and then let's dive immediately into the next lecture. It's by Inge van de Ven, and she is assistant professor online culture here, also at Tilburg University. She researches literary and media studies, and she also really looks into digital culture and digital literature when it comes to that. But she also has this kind of other project. I think she mentioned she called it a hobby project looking into ASMR, and she also wrote some really interesting articles on it. And basically in those articles she focuses on ASMR girlfriends and boyfriends and how it relates to loneliness and also isolation. So please, a big applause for Inge van de Ven.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm going to continue with my normal voice if you're okay with that, because I'm not going to maintain this. Thank you, Hannah, for the kind introduction. As Hannah says, it's kind of a hobby project of me. I'm coming at this from a slightly different perspective compared to the first speaker. Basically media studies, so I'm more interested in what the videos look like, and I'm going to give some examples of the very particular aesthetics of this subgenre of ASMR girlfriend role-playing games in the personal attention genre.
Do you want this?
Oh, yes, thank you. That will be very helpful. Yes, so just to dive into it, I first also want to play a little clip just to show you what I'm going to be talking about, because it's very hard to describe. Yes, it's about 4 minutes. scratch on my neck. So this video was uploaded in April 2020 by Daria Lozinki ASMR, and it's called ASMR in Isolation, Are You Ready to Get So Close? So what she's doing, the narrative is very basic, as you've seen. You're stuck in an elevator with Daria and you're having a panic attack, and she's helping you through your anxiety by tapping with her hands, amongst other things, and giving positive affirmations. So during the pandemic, especially, as you all know, our relationship to technology, especially our ways of connecting with each other through technology, have only been intensified by social distancing measurements by governments and public health agencies worldwide. So billions of people around this time were actually confined to their homes. And many of our everyday engagements, many of the aspects of our everyday lives were migrating at that time from the offline to the online realm. You can think of studying, of course, work, social interactions with your friends, shopping, for instance, even funerals, memorial services were being held online at the time. And this has a very big effect on romantic relationships and ways of experiencing intimacy as well, especially maybe for people who were at the time single or living alone. And as we all know, isolation and loneliness are problems that really have a very big effect on mental health. So they can cause problems like anxiety, as we already have seen in the video, depression, insomnia, panic attacks, and generally a very low self-esteem. So what some dating apps did, in fact, around the same time, there was a rise in downloads of dating apps. And I thought that might be a little surprising because, of course, it was prohibited or at least discouraged to actually meet face-to-face. But what dating apps like Tinder and Hinge did, and also some queer dating apps, was to promote online or virtual dating, especially to alleviate loneliness and isolation. But of course, we know that loneliness and isolation are not new problems by any means. There are many factors that contribute to them that were already there before the pandemic. They just got a lot of attention back then. For instance, a high degree of individualism in Western societies, divorce is on the rise almost worldwide, and there's a global increase also in one-person households. So these problems were in fact already there for a longer time. And when I think of the relationship between digital technology and loneliness and isolation, I have to think of the word solutionism. I don't know if any of you know what that means. No? Well, I'm using it in the sense that the writer Yevgeny Morozov uses it. And it is basically that digital technologies and media try to solve certain problems that weren't even there to begin with without these media, or at least were not to the same extent present without them. So in this case, it seems like we use a lot of digital technology to solve problems like loneliness and isolation, while those same technologies also kind of worsen the problems that they set out to solve. In the case of ASMR, we could say that ASMR solves loneliness and isolation by creating a simulacra of personal attention and effective proximity, so closeness, but doing this exactly by way of screens. We already know, thanks to Yvonne, what ASMR is, so I can be a little bit brief about that. My definition was a technologically mediated experience of a physiological response, called often the tingles, to a range of auditory, visual, and tactile stimuli called triggers. And Hannah has already told you what triggers were as well. So it's like crinkling sounds, it can be tapping, it can be smacking or scratching or any type of sound. And also, as Yvonne said, a personal attention. So I'm going to zoom in now on the subgenre ASMR girlfriend role-playing videos, which is a little bit different from what we've seen so far. Also, the Daria Lozinka video wasn't technically a girlfriend video. What a girlfriend video is well, there's a whole range of different things that they do. It can be like an elaborate fictional universe, it can be a very simple video, often a narrative, as we will see in a second, is exceedingly simple. And there is a whole variety of content. There are also boyfriends, of course, and it's not all heteronormative, but I just selected like from the top 10 of hits that I got when I selected for girlfriend videos. And I wonder, do you see any commonalities as well? Just at first glance, do you think like, do they have anything in common?
It's for the recording.
I think maybe they're hypersexualized in a lot of the cases.
Absolutely, yes, very sexualized. So they portray the ideal girlfriend in a way, and for many people that is actually sexualized. Anything else? I thought actually in some cases I had to check if I have the same woman twice, because I think they're all very much alike. They, most of them are able-bodied, white, cisgender, very normatively attractive, what have you. They all speak English, but you don't really see that from this, this image, of course. So I think there's a high degree of repetition, and indeed it's quite sexualized. And amongst ASMR artists, that's not something you can say because they say it's not sexualized. So this is a bit of a tension there, I would say. So these are some of the things they have at first glance in common. I do think in many cases it's a little bit heteronormative as well, like they portray a quite old-fashioned feminine role. As you can see, sorry, here. So this is just an example of the typical narrative arc. So you are the viewer, it's point of view, so it's from your perspective as a viewer. You are cast in the role of the boyfriend of the performer usually, or a girlfriend, and then you come home from a long day at work and they are usually waiting for you, ready to like really give you a lot of attention and personal pampering.
Hi there, hi. How are you doing? You doing okay? Yeah. Okay. You had a little bit of a rough day. Okay.
So you're having a rough day. I don't know why she's at the same time applying lip gloss, but I think it's because of the sound as well.
Okay. Well, that's no good. I'm so sorry that you had a rough day. But you're home now and I'm gonna help you relax, okay? Okay.
Yeah, then usually they do all kinds of things to make you feel better at the end of your hard day of work, and they affirm that you are, that they really appreciate that you work so hard for them, and they usually went shopping. So it's a little bit back to the 50s sometimes. So I just collected some statements because I know typically that people have very strong reactions to these videos. It's either like it or love it, or you experience tingles, or you have this almost repulsive reaction. So I just wonder if you see a video like that, a reaction could be like the caring portrayed here is not real, like it's not real intimacy or it's not a real connection. It is superficial, or even worse, it can be bad for real relationships. Does any of you here adhere to one of these statements? Yes? Can anyone elaborate very briefly?
I think so. I would say that the caring portrayed here is not real. I mean, while yes, it depends in terms of how you perceive it, but I think because of, I mean, personally knowing that there is a large audience for ASMR content, and there is also a saturation of people who can deliver an ASMR content, that you can feel that like it's already been commodified, so you can you have this sense of this is for the views kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And so it's just like to me when I see this, there is a feeling of repulsion because I don't know, there's just something off about it. Yeah, but I think like you said with solutionism, it has a role to play for some people, I imagine, that maybe require some form of care that is not the same kind of care that I require. So, yeah.
You deserve the real thing. No, I get you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, so you're saying it's not exactly real. It's not real intimacy. Doesn't mean it doesn't serve any purpose, but the fact that it's commodified makes it less than real. Okay, I think many people would say this. And then I also, I wanted to ask you, what is real intimacy? That might be like a really big question right now, but what makes it not real? So you would say it's not commodified. Real intimacy is for one person, specifically geared towards that person? Is that what you're saying? Not for many at the same time, and also for the clicks and for the money?
Yeah, so it really then brings me, like, it reminds me of the movie Her, because he falls in love with a robot thing that can just like talk to him as if it's his girlfriend. And then when he figures out that she talks to like 10,000 people with the same kind of intimacy, he's immediately like disenchanted all of a sudden. And so I feel like when it comes to what is real intimacy, I mean, it could be so many things that are not what those videos normally post about, because it's always the same kind of like heteronormative narrative of what intimacy is, which is always linked to sexual kind of like undertones, when in reality, I think we all experience intimacy in like the most basic ways, like, I don't know, acts of kindness or gift giving, for instance. But you don't see a lot of ASMR of like, hey, I got you tea or something, or well, you can actually.
They buy stuff.
They exist, but but like normally there's this like weird sexual undertone that like I'm like, okay. Yeah, but that's my opinion.
Okay, I see. We have many elements here to work with, I think. Thank you. It's like commodified, but you also say, well, if it's too many people at the same time, it cannot be that singular in a way. So we want something more authentic than that. Yeah, I think we have to keep this in mind for what follows. So there are people, like also cultural studies scholars, who are thinking the exact same way, and who have been criticizing our use of digital media in general, because it kind of makes our real contacts with other humans a little bit more less intense, we could say. So people like Sherry Turkle, for instance, has talked about too enthusiastic, human-robot interaction in that way, where she says that is not real intimacy, for instance. And Zygmunt Bauman talks about the use of mobile technologies like phones in a way that our normal relationships become a bit more superficial because of those. So these people would say probably that real intimacy, it has to do at least with reciprocity. It is a two-way street, so it cannot be from one to many others, especially when you don't know or see the other. It's about really knowing the other person. So there's many definitions, also scholarly, academic, of intimacy, but what they usually have in common is the following elements. Emotional closeness. So what I said, a reciprocity of trust and knowledge, really knowing the other person better than other people do, and vice versa, and also trusting each other. A self-disclosure, so being able to open up, to tell something about yourself that's not for everyone. And then affectivity, so being affected as a being, as your whole being, and also embodied, as an embodied self, we could say. So these are all elements of definitions of intimacy. And of course, I would like to know then, is this even possible when it's performed publicly, mediated by a screen, from one person to thousands of other people who are faceless and invisible? And if not, or if so, how are intimate forms of relating brought about in and by these videos, and how do they affect their viewers in terms of loneliness and general well-being? Like, do these videos really alleviate loneliness? That's a big claim. I've written a chapter about this, and in the chapter I compare them to TikTok POV boyfriend videos, which is equally exciting and very fascinating, but also totally different. So if you want to read the chapter, you can email me and I can send it to you. And I also interviewed one ASMR artist in 2020, Jasmine, who has a channel called Wokies ASMR. So some of my findings here are also inspired by this interview. So to begin, how does ASMR generate intimacy? First of all, the settings, I would say. It's always someone's bedroom or someone's living room or bathroom. It's always an intimate, very personal living space. It's portrayed in a very authentic way, but often quite high production value. So maybe even the more the production value is, the more authentic it seems. Then there is the cinematography, which is a fancy word for like things like camera, the way that it's put onto the screen. And what we see here is a continuity between the spaces on screen and the space off screen. So often they accommodate space for the viewer in a very literal sense. So here you can imagine yourself lying down next to the girl who is gaming, playing Fortnite with her. And I think that is because our media that we use nowadays, like portable, like smartphones, for instance, or tablets, are portable. So they kind of afford what they call mobile attachments. And this means that you can actually wake up with them and go to sleep with them. And the continuity of your own bed and their bed, or your own couch and their couch, really affords this feeling of closeness. And also it gives very strategic view of cleavage or bottoms half of the time. Then there is the camera angle as well. And this is Wokie's ASMR, whom I had the interview with. And what she said was that often these positions are lying down, very vulnerable positions, very private activities like sleeping. And what she told me was she uses a slightly higher up camera angle because that makes the viewer feel like they are in power. So it makes her a little bit more subservient, submissive, and the viewer, the boyfriend, is in control in a way. It makes them feel like they're important and significant in her life. And I thought it was really fascinating because all these elements are really well thought through. Nothing is done by accident. It's very strategic. Then another thing that ASMR has been linked to is synesthesia. So synesthesia is the experience of an experience of having a stimuli react to one sense and then another sense is being evoked. For instance, I see the color yellow and I have a certain taste in my mouth. And of course, in the sense of ASMR, it is mostly touch that is evoked, because that's the one thing that's missing actually from a YouTube video. It's evoked both through visuals and sounds. Through visuals, because they often seem to reach through the screen, through the camera, to touch you directly. And they tap the screen in order to do that, or sometimes the body parts are also cut off in very weird ways to kind of evoke proximity, closeness. And then through sounds, of course, through the whispering. Like if you have earphones on, or especially in earphones, and someone whispers to you, that gives you the impression that they're actually very close. And they can also use all kinds of props, like oil on their hands, to give these sensations as well. Oh yeah, and haptic visuality, I must say, that's a word in film studies for exactly that thing, where you use visuals or audio visuals to evoke this same sense of touch. Then there is the address, the mode of address. That's in literary studies how we call it, like the second person in this case. So they consistently use the word you. I'm going to give a very short example of the same performer that you saw before.
So what happened today? Do you want to talk about it? Oh. Yeah, okay. I can definitely see why that would be stressful.
So you see the idea, it is kind of like an imagined dialogues that she engages in with the performer. So again, they're coming home from work and she really pauses for the exact amount of time that it would take you to tell your side of the story. So again, generating this sense of reciprocity, this idea of them needing you as much as they need you. So attention as a two-way street. But another effect I feel that it has, and I think I want to talk to Guus about it later, is also context collapse in a way. Because this is sent out by the idea of millions of potential viewers, so it cannot be too specific. So the effect is also quite bland and quite generic in a way. And it is not really about the content. I find that fascinating as well. So what I think, many of these videos, nothing really happens. And I think the meaning of the videos also doesn't really lie in what happens, but more in this sense of co-presence. So in the fact that someone simply is there with you, which is a really reassuring feeling. And this has been called ambient intimacy. And this is the same effect, for instance, maybe some of you have this experience of following a person online and then constantly checking their updates. It has just been Valentine's Day, maybe someone is either heartbroken or madly in love, and this is what people do. And then this feeling that you get from the other person just being there and living at the same time can be called ambient intimacy. So it can be a series of little tweets. It can be anything, but it's not about one significant message or one picture that means a lot to you, but just this cumulative idea of co-presence, we could say. And you have that in videos like these, girlfriends who are just sleeping. For instance, in the next one, ASMR Wokies is sleeping for 23 minutes. Well, I can just use this still because it just looks like this. This is everything that happens in the video. But you also have it with studying buddies, for instance, where you want to study and you don't want to do it alone, you can have someone ambiently studying in the background. One of the last points I want to make is parasocial interaction. So these were all elements of the videos themselves, more the aesthetic factors. But of course, there's also interaction between the makers of the videos and their fans or viewers themselves. And in some cases, they ask a question, and you can respond to that in the comment section. Jasmine of ASMR Wokies, again, really makes a point of trying to respond to every single viewer that leaves a comment for her, even if it's only through an emoji. And parasocial interaction, I must say, is the word that is often used for instance, when you think you know a celebrity because you follow them and because they give you some attention and you have a feeling that you really know the other person. But of course, in many cases, the opposite is not true and you also don't really know them. So it's social, but it's not exactly. And then also in the interview with Wokies, she took it a little step further because she is also on OnlyFans as a platform. And she said she uses that in a little bit different way because people also have to pay for different levels of intimacy. And then she said, I know my OnlyFans fans more intimately than my YouTube subscribers, as we are more on that personal level, they've seen a little bit more of me. I feel like I know them more than they know me. I do sometimes get on a friend basis with fans, and speaking to them for a couple of hours does compensate for things I might be missing in the physical realm. It's made me realize that, of course, a lot of these creators spend a lot of time online and do not have so much time to go out. So this makes it already a little bit more real as well, we could say. To the point where I don't know if here we can speak of a parasocial relationship or maybe actually more intimate social relating. And then, of course, the effects, if we look at the YouTube comments, I didn't do an actual reception study, that's for someone else to do. But if we look at the comments simply under these videos, they kind of corroborate that idea that something more is happening here and that, in fact, it might be doing something to loneliness and isolation. Here, for instance, someone who says that he misses his ex-wife terribly and therefore watches the videos and they kind of soothe him for having to sleep alone. And there's also a whole community on YouTube around these videos since 2009. So the people who are watching them also engage together into commenting on each other's comments and then express that they are not alone in this. So they, for instance, lie awake at night and there's a very real sense that other people are lying awake at the same time, experiencing the same thing, missing someone at the same time. So all of this also feeds into this idea of alleviating loneliness a little bit. So in conclusion, is this intimacy or not? I want to say yes and no, but we can talk about it more later. On the one hand, yes, because I think we have seen that in many instances of these aesthetic categories, ASMR generates intimacy because it tries to transgress all kinds of boundaries between bodies, between you and me, between the medium and the user, for instance. Someone trying to touch you through the screen. And it depends on you a little bit if this succeeds or not. You can also say no, like you were saying before, like no, because its main goal is to make money. It is effective labor, we could say. It's labor that women perform in order to help out their communities, but they are monetizing their own intimate spaces and their own bodies and private lives in order to do so. So this is a little bit more cynical as a view, but equally right as an answer, we could say. It cannot be real intimacy. Then again, if I see comments like that and people responding to each other like that, I feel, it cannot be entirely fake because it does really cause both physiological and psychological effects. So I wonder, do we need a new definition of intimacy altogether? And some points I wanted to really to conclude, to make you think in a different way. If you really dislike this, and if it really gives you a strong reaction of no, this is really not intimacy, it also kind of points a mirror to your own love life, because when you think of it, how many of us have had long distance relationships where you talk hours on end on Skype or Zoom, and maybe even go to sleep at the same time using a medium so you can sleep together? Or how many of us have relationships where they talk on WhatsApp all the livelong day? Or for instance, maybe you're on OnlyFans, where it's very different from a mass medium where someone broadcasts something to a large audience, because there's all these different levels of intimacies and more personalized content. So our whole platformized economy of media already makes this a little bit less binary, I would say. And then in the end, I think being in love is also just about 50% projection anyway. So on that cynical note, I want to end it.
All right, thank you, Inge. Are there any questions? No? No questions? Did you have a question? We are going to do the interview in a minute, right? So, yeah, I think we also have to go to the small break. So now we will end today with an interview, and that's with Guus Voorham. He's a filmmaker, and he made the ASMR documentary or film Alone Together. And it was actually his graduation project from Willem de Koning Academy. And in this film, he focuses really on ASMR, and also I think what Inge mentioned, this idea of girlfriend role play. Before I invite them here on the floor, let's just first watch a couple of clips from his documentary, and then I will invite you to come to the floor. All right.
Hey, I didn't expect you to be back this late. I'm nearly falling asleep. I missed you. You look tired. How was your day?
You woke me up. Yeah, I was waiting for you. How were you? I missed you. How was work?
Yeah. Really?
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad you had a better day. Mine was okay. After you left, what did I do? I slept, and then I mopped, and then after that, I went to the store, and I went grocery shopping, and I also got these cute little planters for my plants.
Yeah, you know I love to shop. I got some Christmas things. It is not too early. Not bad. It's not too early for Christmas.
I know we're saving money, but they were really cute. You're so cute. No, really, you're really great. Thank you for working. I really appreciate all that you do. You make it fun to live here.
I would also like to show you this part because I think it's also really relating to what Inge talks about just now, about what is real intimacy and also reciprocity and this idea of uniqueness also in there.
And you've been so good to me. I feel like it's too good to be true almost. You know, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it just never does. It just keeps getting better. And it makes me really sad to think that you don't see those things in yourself, and you think that people don't love you when I do. I love you, and I want you to know that, because you should hear it more often. And I wanted to tell you.
I think sometimes we all need to be told that, you know. Sometimes it's important that we're told how much we're loved. That we're told that nobody can replace us. Nobody could ever replace you. You are the one unique you. And a fabulous one at that.
Tomorrow could be a whole.
Okay, I think we'll end it there. If you want to watch this documentary, it's also online. You can just watch it in whole. Then I would like to invite Inge and Guus to come sit on the chairs over here for the interview. Please also give applause for Guus and Inge.
Do we need a mic or do we just shout?
I think I have mine on. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Hi Guus.
Hi.
So thanks for this. It's an amazing afstudeerproject. How do you say graduation project? It's a fascinating film to see, and I'm still trying to put my finger on why exactly. So I was wondering to begin, what was the idea behind it? Like when were you first confronted with this genre of videos, and what was your initial response?
Oh man, I think I stumbled on it by accident, believe it or not. You know, I think we've all been on these like YouTube wormholes where you just go from one thing to the other and like you venture into weirder places. Mm-hmm. And that's how I found this. It wasn't that hard to find. I think there's so much out there. And my initial reaction was, I mean, I was upset. Yeah. I was upset and I couldn't quite figure out why, and that's usually a good sign. So I remember presenting this to my teachers at the time, who were guiding me during my graduation period. And they said something like, well, you know, if you don't know what it's about, maybe just start editing with them, you know, and start playing with them in a timeline and see if that makes something clear. Mm-hmm. And that was meant to be just a simple exercise, but the entire movie was born out of that exercise.
And what did you discover in these videos? And did it change your initial reaction of the quite negative response?
Well, I mean, it was part negative, but there was also a positive aspect to it because I had to sort of begrudgingly admit that many of these videos did have an effect on me, mm-hmm. like this sort of soothing, anti-lonely effect. And so there was like a conflict there. Mm-hmm. And then what did I learn? You know, I went into this just watching a ton and then downloading a ton. And so I think at one point I had on my computer like 30 hours of these videos. And so I spent like something like 7 weeks only watching these videos. And you do sort of habituate to the effect, to the uncomfortable effect, actually. So the more you got into it, the more I got into it, the more I watched, the more I became a sort of a genuine fan, at least for a couple of weeks. And I was like, oh, I get it. You know, I prefer that one, and that one's okay, but that one's really nice. Yeah.
Okay, so slightly less negative.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the editing. So the idea behind this, is it that you put together your own ideal girlfriend, or why did you pick these particular parts of these particular videos?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I mean, like the first thing that sprung out to me was that this was for like men a way to receive the nice parts of being in a relationship without having to deal with the actual person on the other side that has other aspects maybe. So it's in a way it's like making your own perfect synthetic girlfriend. And I thought that was really compelling. I thought maybe that's something that will be genuinely possible in a couple of years. And then for now, I wanted to sort of try to attempt to make my own custom-made girlfriend. Like that was the starting point. Like I'm gonna make my own girlfriend, and that's gonna make some people uncomfortable, but it will be a really interesting conversation.
So she says the exact things that you want to hear at the exact right moments, and she's pre-programmed to please.
Yeah, exactly, like a cyborg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And does it bother you, the heteronormative aspect that came up before? So this idea of care in a very domestic sense. I stay around all day, like mopping the floor and sweeping was one of the fragments, and I shop for you, and while you do all this big important work. And
Yeah.
Is it
Thank you for working. I really appreciate all that you do.
exactly? Is
You
it
make it fun
problematic?
to live here. Where exactly, I wonder? No, obviously I'm not blind to that. It's very upsetting. It is interesting though. Once I first showed it to people, like all the men, like male teachers too, when they saw it, they're like, oh, this is about loneliness. This is about male loneliness, which was a topic at the time with, you know, these incel attacks. And then all the women I showed it to, they came to it from this feminist perspective, like, oh, this is about heteronormative roles that women have to play. And it can be both, obviously.
Yeah. I think in neoliberal societies in general, we find a way to monetize all these caring traditional roles in a way. So it doesn't have to be a contradiction per se, but it does make people uneasy because of that, I think.
Yeah.
And why is it called, the title is Alone Together or Together Alone?
Alone Together?
Which is, I think, the same title as the book from Sherry Turkle. Is that a coincidence?
No, I mean, I did my own research, and I read her book as well, and I was like, I could never find a better title. And so I was like, who's going to know about that book, you know? Especially in films. Yeah. But I mean, it's a really, I mean, there's an album with that name. Like, many people figured that name out, yeah.
And do you want to say anything about why that title, or do you think it's self-explanatory?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think there's a quote in the film where she's like, you're so special to me, and you're the only one for me, which is ironic when you know that that video has been watched like 100,000 times. And so this was just an expression of that idea.
And is that a cynical reiteration? Like, do you choose that particular sentence? I wondered, is it a little bit cynical as well? Because we obviously know that you're not the only one. In fact, you're very far from the only one. Or?
I think if a film or any piece of art is only cynical, it's instantly boring. So there's an obvious cynical undertone to it, but then there's also a tone of genuine affection to it. I think there can be something really sweet about like people recording videos, hoping it might alleviate the pains of strangers on the other side of the world. You could make a pretty good point that it's also very nice. And that wouldn't take away from the problematic parts of it, but you know what makes it compelling that it can be both at the same time.
I'm wondering now, how original are we really when we say that kind of thing? Like in a normal relationship, you also say a lot of things that are quite worn down culturally and that other people have said a million times before. And what does make that so original and singular?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a Shakespeare quote, like the whole world's a stage and everybody's acting in it. And I mean, you ventured into the question of whether this is real intimacy or not. I think that's like there's a really murky waters to walk in, because I do wonder whether the intimacy that I experienced with my girlfriend, whether that can be said to be real when it's an experience, you know, and you won't be able to really find it exactly as it is in a brain scan.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not that material or to materialize. And my point about projection as well. Like there's so much projection going on all the time in love already.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, not to make this too personal, but I remember like my girlfriend complaining to me that she wanted to be comforted more. And then in the days that came after that, she started doing that to me more. And then I noticed that. And I was like, all right, you're doing the thing that you want me to do to you.
You're being programmed.
Yeah. And of course, it's all genuine. I don't think she's faking it. But I think like real relationships do involve some level of acting also.
Of course, yeah. So I really like this aspect of it, that it makes you think about what we consider real intimacy, if that's even a term we want to use. And what were some of the responses that you got when people watched the video?
It's always great because, I mean, you have to understand, like, it's already ironic to watch these videos when you're by yourself. It gets even worse when you're in a room with, like, 100 or 200 people in like a big cinema, and they're all very much focused on you, but you have like neighbors also, right? Yeah. So, I mean, my favorite part of it still is that it makes people uncomfortable. Like, I love uncomfortable cinema. I mean, maybe if some of you know Ruben Östlund, who has like, who's also very good at making uncomfortable movies, and it's good fun to get like a rise out of people.
Yeah, so the original is already uncomfortable, and the sheer overload of it and the repetition that you add is...
And the skill also,
very,
right? Because this is normally on a laptop screen. If you just blow it up, it gets worse. Yeah.
It's not meant to be like that.
Yeah.
It's true. Hannah.
Yeah, I think we can also maybe ask the audience if they have some questions. Do you have some? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I think I just wanted to ask, so you combed through a whole bunch of these videos. Are there videos where, for instance, we've seen the positives, right? Are there the negatives in terms of intimacy, but it's, you didn't do the dishes, this is the third time this week, what's wrong with you? You know, because we're trying to like simulate the relationship life, right? Like, does it come with the good and the bad, or is it just the good?
I found one.
Yeah.
And it was obviously parody, but it was from a woman that like did the ones you see back here. And maybe she had the thought that you had, like, wouldn't it be fun to also do the bad things? But obviously when she did it, it came off as comedy, and people laughed and said, oh, you're so funny, you're hilarious, I love your account, etc.
You can also Google for crazy jealous girlfriend ASMR. Some of those as well. Yeah. Always the women.
And sorry, if this is just a follow-up. Is there, I mean, the obvious theme is that it's all girlfriends. This exists with men as well. Does the boyfriend, and does this also exist in different like sexual orientations as well? Like in a, for instance, in a gay relationship, or does that exist?
It's smaller. Like if you look for boyfriend roleplay videos, you will find many of the same videos, but with way less hits. I can't answer the whether they're gay or not. I mean, I suppose it could be. I mean, it could be consumed by gay people, you know.
Yeah.
But I've never actually Googled like gay men roleplay video. Maybe that's worth checking out. I don't know actually.
And are the themes similar?
That's a good question. Actually, man, this was years ago since I Googled it. I mean, maybe it's more fresher in your memory. I do think there are similarities, but I mean, the men still play very much a caring role. They usually sort of evoke this sort of baritone whisper, like, don't worry, everything's going to be just fine. And it's masculine, you know, but it's still caring. You know.
Are there any other questions, maybe? No? Yeah, I think if you also don't have any questions anymore, is there something you still want to add, Guus, or?
No,
Yeah?
okay.
All right. Then I think if there's no questions left, we can end it here. Thank you so much for being here. It was a small, intimate setting, but I think it also fits the team a little bit, so I think that was nice. I, of course, want to thank the speakers. Please, again, a big applause for the 3 of them.